In the haunting world of Interview with the Vampire, Louis, a grief-stricken plantation owner, is turned into a vampire by the charismatic Lestat. Together, they navigate through centuries of immortality, grappling with their contrasting perspectives on their undead existence. In present-day San Francisco, journalist Daniel Malloy interviews Louis de Pointe du Lac, who asserts that he is a vampire. Louis recounts his former life as a wealthy plantation owner in 1791 Spanish Louisiana, marked by profound sorrow after the loss of his wife and unborn child. Plunging into despair, he descends into a life of excess, squandering his time and wealth on gambling and encounters with prostitutes. His sole desire is to reunite with his deceased family in the grave. During a night of gambling, a confrontation ensues, and another gambler threatens him with a gun, a fate Louis welcomes. After the threat subsides, Louis and his companion leave the tavern, unknowingly under the watchful gaze of a vampire lurking in the shadows. Seeking an end to his misery, Louis crosses paths with the vampire Lestat de Lioncourt on the New Orleans waterfront. Louis and the prostitute find themselves on the docks, where a menacing pimp brandishes a knife. Unexpectedly, both the pimp and the woman are violently taken and slain. Oblivious due to intoxication, Louis collapses onto a heap of sacks. The vampire, later identified as Lestat de Lioncourt, finally unveils himself and bites into Louis's neck. As he drains Louis's blood, he inquires if Louis has had his fill of death. Given Louis's desire for death, the vampire drops him along the banks of the Mississippi River. After surviving the fall, Louis became gravely ill. In a bid to alleviate his suffering, Lestat offers a solution: eternal relief from pain and death. Witnessing his final sunrise, Louis embraces his newfound vampiric existence, sealed by Lestat's bite and the consumption of his blood. Embracing the shadows, Louis is laid to rest in a coffin, beginning his journey as a newborn vampire. While Lestat revels in hunting and killing humans, Louis resists the urge to take human lives, opting instead for animal blood. Disturbed by Lestat's enjoyment of killing, Louis undergoes immense suffering as a vampire. Louis sustains himself by consuming the blood of birds and rats, as Lestat indulges in hunting both slaves and aristocrats. During a party one night, Lestat becomes fixated on the widow, St. Clair, and her young lover. Louis discovers Lestat's ability to read minds, and is informed that St. Clair orchestrated her husband's murder. Lestat, drawn by the allure of evildoers, departs with her lover, leaving Louis to accompany St. Clair on a stroll with her dogs on the mansion grounds. While Lestat effortlessly dispatches the young man, Louis finds himself killing the dogs instead, prompting St. Clair to scream. Breaking the widow's neck, Lestat chastises Louis for nearly jeopardizing their secrecy. Enraged, Louis shoves Lestat against a tree, but instead of reprimanding him, Lestat applauds his fury, declaring that it's precisely why he selected Louis. Laughing, Lestat asserts that Louis can choose his meals, but he'll patiently wait for Louis to fully embrace his vampire nature. In the mansion, Louis implores Lestat for the purpose of their cursed existence, but Lestat remains ignorant. Annoyed by the noise made by the locals, and unable to convince Louis to join him in New Orleans for the Paris Opera, Lestat departs in irritation. In the meantime, his housemaid, Yvette, pleads with her master to aid the plantation and requests him to send Lestat away. Succumbing to his hunger, Louis finally drinks Yvette's blood, killing her. The slaves, fed up, attacked Louis's residence during the night. Disgusted with himself for killing his gentle house slave, Louis forcefully opens the door and presents them with Yvette's lifeless body. He discloses his true identity as a vampire and releases them, advising them to flee from the cursed land, then proceeds to set his home ablaze. Upon arrival, Lestat expresses his displeasure with Louis for destroying their last remaining wealth. Despite the loss of their mansion, Lestat remains undeterred and swiftly secures rented rooms for them in the heart of New Orleans. During an evening, Lestat invites two prostitutes over, proceeding to kill one of them. He then kisses the second woman's chest, leaving a bloodstain on her dress. Opening her wrist, Lestat collects her blood in a glass and offers it to Louis. However, Louis rejects the blood, discarding the glass, much to Lestat's anger. Lestat continues to play with the woman, placing her in a coffin and pretending she's dead. Despite her pleas, Louis refuses to take part, and in the end, Lestat, frustrated by Louis's reluctance, kills the woman. Roaming the streets of New Orleans during a plague outbreak, Louis succumbs to his hunger and feeds on a young girl whose mother died to the epidemic. In an attempt to persuade Louis to remain with him, Lestat transforms the dying girl, Claudia, into a vampire. They then raise her together as if she were their daughter. Louis harbors a genuine paternal affection for Claudia, whereas Lestat indulges her and regards her more as a protégé. Claudia, driven by a voracious appetite for blood, resorts to killing individuals ranging from her dressmaker to her pianist. She manipulates her delicate appearance to lure potential victims, all the while under Lestat's guidance, to become a ruthless killer. Over the course of 30 years, Claudia undergoes psychological maturation while retaining the appearance of a little girl. Confused about her perpetual youth, Claudia questions why she hasn't grown like the woman she observed at the docks. During a visit from Lestat, he gifts her another doll, triggering Claudia's frustration with being treated like a child. In a fit of rebellion, she discards her dolls, inadvertently revealing the hidden corpse of the woman from the docks beneath. Claudia had killed her, harboring the hope of transforming into an adult. Shocked, Louis and Lestat chase after Claudia as she attempts to age herself by cutting her hair, only to find it magically growing back. Angry with Claudia, Lestat vows never to reveal the secret of creating a vampire and is ordered to dispose of the corpse. Frustrated, Claudia storms out, with Louis following. Louis decides to disclose the harsh truth to her. She will never age, die, or grow up. He takes her to her original home, revealing how he fed on her and how Lestat turned her into a vampire. Disgusted, Claudia expresses hatred towards both of them and flees. After a night of realization, Louis finds Claudia, who eventually forgives him. She suggests they leave Lestat and go on their own, but Louis insists they can't escape him. Undeterred, Claudia devises a plan. Claudia goes to him, pretending to reconcile, and leads him to see the presents she has prepared. She deceives Lestat into consuming the dead blood of twin boys she killed with a laudanum overdose, weakening him, and then cuts his throat. Despite Louis being shocked and upset by Lestat's demise, he assists Claudia in disposing of Lestat's body in an alligator swamp. They spend weeks planning a journey to Europe to seek out other vampires. However, on the night of their departure, Lestat returns, having survived by feeding on swamp creatures. Lestat attacks them, but Louis sets him ablaze. In the ensuing fire, which engulfs the entire town, they manage to escape to their ship and depart. Having journeyed through Europe and the Mediterranean without encountering other vampires, Louis and Claudia establish a peaceful life in Paris around 1870. By chance, Louis crosses paths with vampires Santiago and Armand. Inviting them into his coven, the Theatre des Vampires, Armand presents Louis and Claudia with a unique community where vampires perform theatrical horror shows for humans, blending live feeding with staged performances, unbeknownst to the audience. Following the performance, Armand guides Louis and Claudia to the crypts, acquainting them with his vampire clan. In a gesture of welcome, Armand allows Louis to sample the blood of a young boy under their care. Seeking understanding, Louis inquires about the origins of their kind. To his disappointment, even Armand, renowned as the longest-lived vampire at 400 years, lacks the answers Louis seeks. This revelation confirms Louis's fears. There seems to be no inherent meaning to their existence. Exiting the crypts, Santiago delves into Louis's thoughts, probing into his perceived transgressions against Lestat. Louis remains reticent, prompting Santiago to issue a veiled threat about the grave consequences of killing a fellow vampire. Back at their residence, Claudia discloses Armand's desire to separate her from Louis, suggesting a potential ulterior motive. Louis reassures her that such a separation won't occur. In the following evening, Louis confronts Armand in the crypts once more, where Armand reveals the peril Claudia faces due to the forbidden act of turning someone so young into a vampire. The clan, suspecting them in Lestat's demise, is brewing a sinister plan. Despite Armand's insistence that Louis send Claudia away for her safety, Louis asserts that he will depart alongside her if such a separation is enforced. As Louis contemplates leaving, Armand skillfully draws him back by tantalizing him with the promise of answers to his myriad questions. Armand entices Louis with the prospect of understanding the true essence of being a vampire if he stays. During this exchange, Armand unveils his familiarity with Lestat, evoking a newfound sense of tranquility within Louis. He recognizes Armand as a genuine mentor, a role Lestat could never fulfill. Upon returning home, Louis is astonished to discover that Claudia has brought in a woman named Madeline from the streets. Madeline, a modest shop owner, willingly seeks to become a vampire after losing her only daughter. Observing in Claudia a perpetual child, someone she can nurture and love eternally, Madeline desires to join their vampiric existence. Claudia implores Louis to transform Madeline into a vampire, envisioning her as a new companion, especially since Louis has found a new connection with Armand. Claudia's earnest pleas eventually sway Louis, prompting him to bite Madeline and initiate her transformation into their immortal kind. Shortly after, the Parisian vampire sees the trio and mete out punishment for Lestat's murder. They imprison Louis in a coffin and confine Claudia and Madeline in a chamber, subjected to the fatal touch of sunlight, turning them to ash. Despite Armand's inaction, he releases Louis the next day. Louis searches the crypt frantically for Claudia and eventually locates them in the chamber. Sadly, it's too late. The sun has reduced their skin to ashes, leaving behind only a heap of bones. He grieves, shedding tears for her demise, realizing that he must endure an eternity without glimpsing her face or hearing her voice ever again. Driven by vengeance, Louis returns to the theater at dawn, setting it ablaze and annihilating all the vampires. Armand arrives in time to assist Louis in avoiding the sunrise and once again extends an offer to stand by his side. However, Louis declines, aware that Armand allowed Claudia's demise to claim him exclusively for himself. Over the passing decades, Louis remains unable to overcome the sorrow of losing Claudia and aimlessly traverses the world in solitude. In 1988, he revisits New Orleans and stumbles upon a deteriorated, enfeebled Lestat, leading a secluded life in an abandoned mansion, sustaining himself on rat blood, akin to Louis's earlier existence. Lestat expresses remorse for transforming Claudia into a vampire and implores Louis to reunite with him, but Louis refuses and departs. In the present time, Louis wraps up his interview with Malloy, who implores Louis to turn him into a vampire. Enraged by Malloy's failure to grasp the essence of his tale of suffering, Louis frightens him in a bid to dissuade the idea. Subsequently, Louis disappears, prompting Malloy to rush to his car and flee, playing the cassette tapes of Louis's interview. On the Golden Gate Bridge, Lestat emerges and assaults Malloy, seizing control of the vehicle. Revitalized by Malloy's blood, Lestat presents him with the choice he never had, whether to become a vampire or not, and, with laughter, continues driving over the bridge. And the movie ends here. Thank you for watching, and I highly recommend watching the entire movie as it is incredibly enjoyable. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel, so you can stay updated and receive notifications whenever we upload new videos.